Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. Thank you for defying the weather gods, who have been slightly less favorable today than they were yesterday. Those of you who were with us yesterday and last night, perhaps at the dinner, you may notice that my voice is slightly lower today than it was yesterday, but I don't know why that happened. Anyway, super excited to have you here and to kick off the second day of the very first BioStock Global Forum. In front of us, we have another great day full of expert insights, company presentations and pitches, and keynote speakers. Some are waiting right there. And with us to guide us through the day, we have a moderator, Michael Jewett here from BioStock, and who will also be joined by Sonja Schwarzenbergen, our second moderator for today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jonas, CEO of BioStock, and it's a pleasure to welcome you today. If you need anything during the day, just grab hold of one of the BioStock representatives. You will always find them in the reception, and otherwise we are floating about. So, without further ado, I just want to wish you a great day today, and give the word to Michael. Take it away.
Thank you, Jonas. All right, who's excited? Yesterday was a great day, and we know today is going to be even better. So let me start off with the boring stuff again, just in case you weren't here yesterday. We have the emergency exits designated by the green signs here. We have bathrooms outdoor here across the corridor, and the mingle area for our coffee breaks and lunch. So with that out of the way, actually one more thing I should mention. Since we have the company presentations, you will be allowed to submit your questions through the QR code that you can scan with your phone on the program that you have in your hands there. Otherwise, you will also have a chance to raise your hand. So with that out of the way, let's get started with our first Expert Insights session of the day. And it's called Go Big or Go Home. And our expert for this session is Andreas Schmidt, Senior Vice President, Head of Global BD at Singleron Biotechnologies, and Founder and Managing Director at Springboard Health Angels. Welcome, Andreas.
Well, good morning, and it's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. I had a marvelous day yesterday with a lot of follow-up meetings already scheduled. And I think that's the best indicator of a good conference, and particularly small ones actually, I think are very conductive to personally engage. For today, I could just present you business numbers and technology of what we are doing at Singleron and how we grew from a tiny startup in 6 years to a company with multiple locations, 700 people in China, in Europe, in the US. And I will not do that. I will show you the slides that are usually taken out of business presentations. I will show you the slides that are actually the pictures in my mind when I make decisions on how to scale, how to partner, how to go global, how to judge about a certain situation. And I hope that's more entertaining, it's more insightful, and I also hope that you actually have questions either right after the session in the Q&A or actually any time later today. I will share with you 8 observations between the Nordics, Asia, and Europe that are also closely linked to my personal CV of working in Asia, working in the US, and originally coming from Germany. So I brought you 8 stories from that, the red thread on connections, the patient number 1, how we moved actually from a technology to something that truly impacted people. I will tell you a little bit about the Singleron story, moving as a startup very quickly and scaling. I'll tell you about relationships and why triangular relationships are the most productive. Amalgamation, how I see data and life science moving and what that all means for us. Connecting to the Nordics, I'll tell you a story about Iceland and Berlin. I will vote for a different kind of citizenships of the 80-20 land. And in the end, I'll tell you a little bit about what it takes to learn swimming. Global connections. I will later show you a far too busy slide that actually are my connections into business and into the world. But I think it's not just the analysis of which market is biggest, and like it always sounds like in a lot of corporate presentations so professional of like market growth in this country, and this is why we moved as a company here and there and how we grow the business. But if we really dig deeper, it's often about personal connections. It's about who can you call in China that you actually have the trust that you can build up your operations in Nanjing or Suzhou. Who can you call in the US actually that knows exactly what it takes for your business to generate revenue in the first 3 years? And that's often the hidden red connections that build the story of why your business actually can grow and scale. And establishing that and finding the right people in conferences like this and many other opportunities, I think, is crucial. That here is my personal bio. That's my lifeline connecting actually different dots across the world. I started in a very small city, Bad Salzuflen, in Germany. As I found out later on, I grew up in a room actually that was previously inhabited by Hans Kornberg, who lived there actually about 60 years before me. For a long time I didn't know that. His family had to flee from the Nazis. He moved to the US. He moved to the UK, later to the US. Met Hans Kornberg and got the Nobel Prize in biology. So I'm a biologist. There must be something special about this room. That's where my career started. I'm a scientist turned serial entrepreneur turned investor. So I got an early scholarship to come to the US. I wanted to go there for a year. I stayed for 10 or 12 years. And was very involved. Actually, as a young scientist, you think science is the coolest thing. Hard sciences. As a biologist, you can still talk to like chemists and physics. Anything business is not cool. It's not technology. And it was eye-opening for me to be part of the Management of Technology China program at the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley, being teams of 4 and 4 MBAs and PhDs, writing business cases of companies that today are slightly bigger, like Baidu or Alibaba, interviewing the founders and learning from the other side, from the MBAs. And I appreciated actually the smart people on the MBA side as a scientist and how of an interesting chess game it is to understand customers and move every figure exactly in the right way to conduct business, and particularly that time in China. I started my first company in Singapore right after a PhD, Ioxa Biosystems. I won't tell you that entire story. That was started 2009. That was a jump into cold water by itself. Raised about like 50 million with the background experience of just having conducted your PhD like a year earlier. That was quite a journey. With that experience, I was invited. That was a proteomics company. I brought it to Germany, to the US, and later 2017 was asked by the Singapore government to help other companies, closed a lot of Series A and seed rounds in Singapore, and built up, was an advisor of a company. 2 weeks later said, hey, this is cool. I will not be your advisor. They said, how about CEO? That's fine. We built up Proteona in 2017, sold it 2 years ago to Singleron. That's the story. I will tell you a little bit more about it. On the right side, you see, since about a year or 1.5, I found myself being an investor and angel. I thought I'm just sparings partner for young founders. We did 17 investments in the last year. We mean it. We are serious. We want to have entrepreneurs that back up other entrepreneurs, particularly in difficult times. Patient number 1. That's a bit of the story of Proteona. We thought we are a research platform combining single-cell genomics and proteomics for cool science, selling that to academics. We had the opportunity to get a lot of patient data from a patient in Heidelberg. The only reason for that was that the older brother was a professor of that patient that was a multiple myeloma cancer patient. So we had access to any data, any clinical samples. We could take blood samples, and basically the wish of the family was, well, my sister will die. At least we want to do something that helps probably other patients, or at least scientific advancement that gives some sense to that. We took this opportunity. We worked with clinicians. We thought we created very cool data, Multiple myeloma, as it already says in the name, multiple myeloma is a very heterogeneous cancer. You have lots of different cancer clones. And whatever therapy you can come up with, you kill some clones and others grow, you have a relapse. That patient had 11 relapses, 11 new therapies. And each therapy is a quadruple therapy. 4 different drugs being used in combination. So you can see it's mind-bogglingly complicated. And we basically did an analysis of that on a single-cell basis. Our technology platform that time combined genomics, proteomics, very deep AI and bioinformatics. And we basically claimed we can predict what therapies should be the best. We thought this is research, that's a cool research tool, that will be a science paper or things like that. We sent our predictions back to the head of the Hem-Onc clinic at the National University Hospital, National Cancer Center in Heidelberg. They said, okay, a few weeks later, well, why don't you come by and meet with us? We did. We were like in front of like a bunch of medical doctors. We opened the laptop. They said, close it. It's fine. We've done it. We changed the therapy of that actual patient based on your early preliminary data, and you were right. All of a sudden, we realized, okay, we are not a research platform. And that's what I mean with patient number 1. I think we are at the brink of like very data-driven, hyper-personalized, hyper-precise medicine. And that was the awakening point for me. Unfortunately, later that patient died of other complications, but that was all of a sudden what we wanted to achieve with the company. From research tools for academia to being a personalized medicine company changed our mindset completely. We knew we had to grow faster. We had a lead investor that was significant, Temasek, the National Endowment of Singapore, one of the largest private equity companies in the world. I went out to negotiate supply chain agreements for the various technology parts. I had one conversation with a Chinese CEO, a German Chinese CEO, Nanfang of Singleron. I started the conversation with, well, this is what we need. This is how you can help us. Let's talk about prices and price points. That was a 1-hour conversation. We ended with, hey, we are competing on this. And that's not really working. Let's figure out something better. How about we buy you? Was her proposal. I said, actually, that makes sense. And I mean, that's also aligned with our vision to grow big, to go fast, and to get things done. Within 1 hour, we agreed on selling the company. Within 3 months, we have done everything from due diligence to integrating the teams, creating different spots in different parts of the world, and having every contract signed. Yesterday in the panel discussion, I hinted a bit on like China speed. That is China speed. No other European company can act that fast because they have too many precautions, too many forms, too many things that go wrong. In this deal, plenty of things go wrong, plenty of misunderstandings, but all of the things that can be fixed. And I think that's something we have to get used to in Europe. There is an Asian speed, there's a Chinese speed that we have to cater to. And we cannot be stuck in the old processes of like how lengthy it is to deal with the tech transfer office or to partner. Oh, sorry, that's... So what do we do now as Singleron? I'll tell you a little bit. Singleron is a technology company that does anything from reagents and kits for single-cell analysis, targeted sequencing, total sequencing, various kits, boxes, devices. We have our own engineering department. We have own software, bioinformatics, and databases. And what is here on the very right side is the old stuff from my own company, Proteona, which is bioinformatics, AI, patient-driven decision-making, precision medicine, and particularly interacting with pharma, helping pharma to stratify on the largest clinical trials in cell and gene therapy, for example. A lot of the CAR-T trials run by like the top 10 pharma companies actually work with technology solutions from us, even though we often cannot talk about that. It makes a lot of sense, and I think it's also, again, like a very Chinese way of thinking about it. We as a company simply want to do everything. Singleron is a startup. We call ourselves a startup. We are 6 years old, we are fresh, we constantly actually do things differently, just that we are a startup with 700 people. Like, we had an early investment round as well, 150 million for a platform. just to tell you of like speed and size and what kind of wave is actually building up there. That's our locations. And just by the names of the cities, you can already tell like what kind of company we are. So you can see we have 2 headquarters in China, Nanjing, Suzhou. That means as a company, we understand how things work in China. I think a lot of Europeans think, okay, we'll go to China, where will be our China headquarter? But China is not a country. It's like lots of districts. It's lots of biotech hubs. It's lots of provinces, each of them with 100 million people that are the size of like Germany. And they all compete for your business, and you have to negotiate with them. Once you're there, it's difficult to negotiate. It's an interesting chess game. If you want to play this well, rather actually negotiate with 2 at the same time, so you have options. So our headquarter annually changes between Nanjing and Suzhou. I mean, I don't say that in China that loud, but that's a smart way actually of dealing with China. If I tell that Chinese people, they say, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, you got it. For Europeans, it's like, oh, we got a really good deal in this or this place, we'll go for that. Well, it's a chess game, and you have to actually be invited and play this and also know that and be smart about that. There's nothing bad about it, it's just tough rules. You have our technology, I mean, we're a Chinese company, and we also heard that yesterday. Our technology came from Yale University, from one of the leading professors, Rongfang, in terms of anything single-cell omics, platforms, and so on. He's one of the big top 3 probably in the world. He is also originally Chinese, but of course, the cool technology, the patents, the IP came from there. And I think that's also something that's very typical. Ben actually said that yesterday as well. A lot of like the cutting edge technology often comes from the US and from Europe, and it's then grown actually inside a Chinese company. Singapore. I mean, why my old company was from Singapore. For a Chinese company, it makes a lot of sense to have a hub in Singapore, because China is a market by itself and works to own rules. Serving the rest of Asia is much, much easier from a hub like Singapore. And that's actually why it is very attractive. A lot of our business in Indonesia, in India, in Malaysia is actually run out of Singapore. And China deals with China in a very difficult way, and that's, I mean, a gigantic market by itself. We are not in Boston, we are not in San Francisco, we are at Michigan because we are price sensitive. Also something you can tell, a lot of Chinese companies are price sensitive. Our colleagues are actually based then in Boston or in San Francisco, but our operations is in Michigan. There's not much life science, it's cheap rents, everything is like half the price of the major hubs. So it does make a lot of sense. We have a European hub in Cologne. Cologne was the birthplace of a lot of like technology platform companies, you know, QIAGEN, Miltenyi, that's all Cologne, Düsseldorf, so it makes also sense, it's a good choice. That slide doesn't need any explanation. Singleron, we have a little mascot, it's called Simon. Simon's best friend is my daughter's unicorn. That's our business proposal for the next 1 or 2 years. They are good friends, we will be a unicorn. Triangular relationships. That's the picture I have in mind whenever I deal with pharma. And I'll tell you why. For startups, it's ridiculously difficult to get pharma deals. Because it always takes, startups, everything has to be fast, you run out of cash, and you have a limited amount of resources. Pharma, they don't even know what they do themselves globally. Just the simplest process, just the NDA with a material transfer agreement takes a year and multiple approvals, it takes forever. The best way for a startup to do work with big pharma is to involve the clinic. Because the one thing pharma can never do without is patients for their trials. And the patients have to come from gifted medical doctors that put that together for the trials. That's the one thing pharma cannot afford, that a trial takes a year longer, because that's billion-dollar revenue 1 year later. So my approach to pharma is finding the doctor, finding the clinical trial that's most relevant for pharma. If I hear presentations of doctors or pharma, I only care about the first slide. The one, you know that slide, the slide that they show for 1 second, that's where I take a picture. Because that's the slide actually where the medical doctor says, I have conflicts of interest, these are the pharma companies I work for. And then I look, what kind of trials are they doing? With what pharma companies? What are the timelines? Where are they? What do they need? What's the budget for that? And you can get a lot of that kind of information. And then you think of, what does the doctor need? Medical doctors, their career strives on being good as medical professions, but also on very, very good publications. If you want to, single-cell analysis is still one of the cutting-edge topics. We are super efficient in that. That's very data-intensive. We have a team. I mean, a lot of universities then have a team of like 2 or 3 postdocs that can do the complex bioinformatic modeling. Well, we have 100 people doing nothing else than that every day. So often, actually, we try to engage the professor saying, hey, how about a nature paper? We can get there in a year. Just look at our track record. Last Nature paper from us is like 2 weeks ago. We do top science on a heavy load of bioinformatics. We can run through experiments much faster, but let's present actually what we are doing to pharma together. And that's like if we just would do this with academia, if we would just do it with a doctor, the problem is that it will be very good research. Well, we are a company, we have to make money. The one institution that can pay for what we are doing, single cell is super expensive, is pharma. So getting this triangle right means actually good business for us. And by now, I also look at things not just for my own company, but also as an investor. Startups that get this right, that make it a equilateral triangle, that understand like how to engage with clinic and pharma at the same time, actually have a real edge to make money, to create a really valuable business that's attractive for venture capital. So a lot of presentations I have, I draw a triangle actually, when I listen to and try to see what is the strongest or the weakest arm. Amalgamation. Amalgam is, I think it's a fascinating material. It's very controversial. None of you would put mercury in your mouth, but actually a lot of us had, or at least in the past, had actually material that was a metal and mercury together, and all of a sudden it's safe. It's also controversial, sure, but I think that's what we see right now in the global life science industry. It's a mixture of data science and life science. And anything that's precision medicine, that's personalized medicine, is really coming together of old life science and medical technology together with a new data approach. I see that every day. And the difficulty is not the technology. Remember my patient one story. We can save patients today by combining good data with cutting-edge technology. The question is, who makes money there? Like, what's the business model? And that's not trivial at all. It's a true challenge. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have right now in the biotech industry, how to make money with that. You hear a lot of buzzwords of AI, and very few people actually make money with that. And Springboard Health Angels, our angel network, soon to be a venture capital firm, typically invest exactly in that intersection, like data-driven business, where people can articulate why they have patient data access, why they figured out to work with Charité or with Karolinska and getting like all the kind of data, and everybody is aligned. And on the other side, actually, how does that connect to hard science, patentable, cool drug indications? We as investors typically work actually not even so close with the life science investors, which the typical big ship venture capital firms in life science and in pharma, but often actually with the digital ones, because they all of a sudden want to move into life science. Like Picos is one of the examples. The Picos founders are like probably by now all billionaires. They are the rocket internet. They are like the delivery hero companies of Germany and made money there and want to move into life science. Different culture, different business models, different questions. They are close partners of what we are doing right now, and it's super efficient. But again, it takes the brave decisions of low ego and let's discuss this together. That was a presentation a bit more than a year ago that I started in Berlin. I was invited to open actually the annual conference of Charité and the Berlin Institute of Health, one of the biggest ships in Germany in life science. And what I want to point it out here is, don't take yourself too serious. And I mean, if you know Berlin a little bit, there are a lot of kings in that. Like all of them actually they are so busy actually with fighting with each other rather than getting things done together. And like right before that, I was in Iceland. I was amazed that a small place with like 350, yesterday I was corrected, 380,000 inhabitants can actually stick together, can be convinced to actually, eventually we are in the same boat, we are on the same island, we can't afford to fight each other, let's get things done, otherwise we are like a tiny spot in the world, and we have to scale, and we have to compete with Europe, with Asia, with Boston and San Francisco. And I think that message gets often lost in Germany. So don't fight with each other. Don't take yourself too serious, but rather actually aim for the big guys like the Metas and compete with them in a funny way, in an ironic way, but actually compete with them. Berlin should compete with Boston and San Francisco and Shanghai, and not with Munich. For Iceland, it's obvious you have to scale. Connecting it to the topic of today, go big or stay home, well, you can't stay home. Singapore, where I lived for many years, and both of my startups come from Singapore, has an amazing track record. 4.5 million people, 1,500 family offices, one of the largest agglomerations of family offices worldwide, tremendous amount of money, and no matter actually what report you look at, one of the leaders in creating startups and cool technology. And still, a lot of pitches, I mean, whenever I'm mentoring companies there, scaling globally from day one is a set. Coming back to Germany, it's not. There's a real, go big or stay home is a real question. Should I go to the German market first and then to the France or then to UK? There are cases where that makes sense. DiGA, for example, is a German word for like the health reimbursement of apps in Germany. Obviously, that's a good business. You probably shouldn't get venture capital for that, but actually if you're a business angel, get it running as a business in Germany. But otherwise, my answer is always, well, you should go big. And I think that's also a bit of message in the Nordics. Go big. Don't look, there are business cases where it makes sense to look into your own economy, but otherwise have a strategy early on of like, how does it impact the world stage in China, in all of Europe, in the US, of your solution. But in these medium-sized places, I can speak more confident about Germany than about the Nordics. There is a real question and it has to be addressed. Yesterday I mentioned already, we, the citizens of 80-20 land, what I wish for is a bit more 80-20 mentality, making quick decisions. Don't go for the professionalism that Germany has, for example, of being obsessed with doing the best thing. And learning to swim, have calculated risk. I was this boy as well. You were that boy or girl there as well. The only mistake you can make here is to just stay on that board. It's okay to go down if you don't want to take the risk. Or you have to jump, but you have to make a decision. And that's something I desire to have more in Germany, in the Nordics, and in all of Europe. Make bold decisions and move. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to questions.
Thank you so much, Andreas.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions right now, but if you stick around during the coffee break,
sure.
I'm sure a lot of people will want to reach out to you.
Absolutely.
And thanks again for your presentation. Andreas really encapsulates the meaning of global, I would say. And now, I hope you're strapped into your seatbelts because we have not one, but 2 panel discussions upcoming. And they're all about partnering strategy and market access. And to introduce those, I would like to welcome Sonja Schwarzenberger up on the stage. Welcome, Sonja.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to see you back. I hope you enjoyed your evening. Please take a seat if you did, and that you're here early. So clinical trials will be the topic of our first panel, and more accurate to optimize clinical development strategies if you are, like I think a lot of people here, looking for a partner or an investment. So here to guide us are, on the left, Tara Heitner, you're Head of Global Search and Alliance Management at Ferring. Welcome.
Thank you.
And to my direct left is Laura Nichols, Senior Director for Clinical Operations and Delivery at Aixial Group. Welcome.
Thank you.
Tara, you have experience from both sides. You have experience, obviously, from big pharma now and, let's say, smaller pharma too. How is it to be the one to choose instead of being the one trying to be chosen?
That's a good question, and one I think it's easy to answer. Definitely, it's much easier to be on the big pharma side, looking at all the opportunities presented to you from the smaller companies and those opportunities. But Ferring, I would call Ferring a little big pharma. So when we're actually also looking at opportunities that to partner with bigger companies like the Pfizers and the Mercks as well. So we sit on sort of in the middle there. But it's much more difficult when I have been at the helm of 3 different small biotechs, selling opportunities, phase 1, phase 2, or even earlier stage to a big pharma, and making sure that you can meet their requirements, understand their requirements, understand what they're looking for, and actually be able to meet those requirements with the limited funding that some companies always have.
Tara, I'm going to be on your case, the whole panel, to please ask a little bit closer, but thank you, of course, for the answer, and that's my responsibility. It's also because we filmed this today, so that the camera will have the sound.
Okay.
I'm sorry, yeah, I'm an old radio gal. I care about sound. No, but I really understand this, and I think it's good also to have those experience, right? And Laura, to introduce you, you're an expert in clinical development. What do your clients usually need help with?
Coming from a full-service CRO, it can be any number of things. So it can be a smaller, more discrete task that might be writing an IMPD or supporting pull-together documentation for a regulatory submission, your IND, for example. Or it can be full-service, first-in-human, phase 1, phase 2 study, or all of those. So it really is very varied and quite broad, quite wide-reaching. I'd say initially one of the main things that our clients are coming to us for is to act as a sounding board. So quite often the company or the client has got their development strategy in mind, and they're looking for someone to validate that or provide them evidence to support what they're looking for. So it could be, we're thinking of this, and this market, and we'll help support with country and site level feasibility to provide them the evidence and sort of, in some aspects, the comfort to pick the right places. It might also be helping support their protocol development. So they might have the protocol already written. It might be, more or less there, but they need an expert to partner with to operationalize that protocol. Is it going to work practically at site? Is it something that the regulators are looking for? So it can be any number of things, I guess, is a very broad answer.
Well, that's why you get to choose also. Tara, we spoke a little bit earlier about the background and how that is sometimes missing when companies come and sort of want to tell you about the stage 1, 2, and 3, or actually sometimes they miss. Could you please develop a bit on that?
Certainly. So Ferring, my role at Ferring is to look for late stage opportunities. That means things that are in phase 3 trials or already on the market. And when we look at these opportunities, we often find gaps in terms of what we can take on. And often these gaps are, could have been addressed in earlier stage of development. So we often don't understand what, for example, why the patient population was chosen, in terms of the standard of care that they have been on. Why, if there's already guidelines, FDA guidelines to running trials, if those guidelines weren't followed, why they were not followed. We have often questions on the dosing, and oftentimes the earlier stage of preclinical and earlier stage trials don't support the final dosing choice, and those things can't easily be explained. So we're often grappling with the decision of, can we actually develop this and take it to market after this trial, or do we have to rerun the phase 2 because it wasn't done properly? So it does behoove the small company to really think about the final label. That's what should be driving the actual business commercial case, and the business commercial case is driven by the label. The label is developed through your target product profile, and that's essential to making sure you're actually developing a drug that's going to be commercially viable in the future.
Do you feel like this relates to you, Laura, with not perhaps being so clear for the receiver what your company is about and what you can show?
Yeah, I think just to echo what Tara said, and we spoke a little bit about this earlier, but it's starting with the end in mind. So even at your first in human stage, what is your end point? Like, what is the regulatory approval that you're needing to exit? Or what is your target product profile, and how do you get there? So to do that, you need a really robust knowledge of the regulatory pathway. You need to have designed your protocol with that in mind. You need to be thinking ahead and thinking about all aspects of your clinical development strategy and building that quality in from the start. And I'm biased, but that really comes from partnering early with your service provider, your CRO, because they have the experience and they can help support and build in those gaps of knowledge that you may have. Typically, as a smaller biotech, you're absolutely the experts in your product, in your asset, but there are knowledge gaps, and I think the best companies appreciate and understand that and are looking to fill those gaps of knowledge so that they have the best chance of being able to get that investment, partner with that pharma company, and really thinking about and we spoke about this yesterday, but those commercial approaches and their strategies to exit.
Talking about planning, and I feel like that is an answer that I get from experts a lot, like look ahead, think about the goal when you start your strategy and plan. But if we go to the other side, like how agile should you be in the work to say, okay, we planned wrong, let's change something up? What do you think, Tara?
I think when you initially choose you have your asset and you want to develop it for a given indication, it's to look at all the possibilities that are out there and build different scenarios, so different commercial cases, and really understand if you choose one pathway in terms of your lead indication or your trial design, that's where it will get you. And there's different things you can work with in terms of changing your label when you design your trial, and you have to. And there is some, a flexibility you can do once you get to, phase 2. But the phase 2B trial will pretty much define your TPP, your label. The patients you include, how they're included, and what the criteria is will define which patients will, if you actually reach your endpoint, will then get your drug, and how you can design your phase 3 trial. So you have to plan things out with that in mind. And if you have every single possible indication, it shows lack of focus. So you really need to choose at some point where you want to go and not just say, well, my drug can treat all of these indications. That's not usually the best way to move forward.
How do you choose the right path?
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to actually add to what Tara said there in terms of you absolutely need a plan, you need to start with the end in mind, but don't be inflexible, I think is also key, because this industry, this environment, it's constantly changing. You will hit hurdles, there may be challenges, They may be challenges that you envisaged and have planned for. Hopefully they are. Also, they may not be. So you need to be able to pivot. So it's be able to change, but don't change wildly, right? Because someone like Tara is going to be looking at what you're presenting in terms of your preclinical, your first in human, your phase 1. And can she join the dots when that comes across her desk? Because if she can't, it's going to be really difficult to make that decision. And there may be someone else who's very eloquently pulled all that together, and they're going to be the ones who get that investment. So it's being able to tell the story as well.
Do you feel like there are any certain areas in this process that are more, better to be adjustable and flexible in, that wouldn't scare you off, basically?
I think early on, one of the weaknesses we've seen often is the dose finding, and often in the preclinical and phase 1, they're using such a narrow range of doses that you get sort of painted into a corner, and you maybe haven't found your optimal dose, but a lot of companies go ahead with some dose that they fell on because they ran some trial or early on. And we can see that it's only like a 5-fold difference in dose. And then we're like, well, have they reached their Cmax? Have they explored higher doses? Could they get away with a lower dose? And they haven't taken the time to explore that. That's just one example. And oftentimes in the future, for example, in one case, a drug was developed for HIV preclinically, but then eventually they decided to pivot and develop the drug for IBD. But the dose finding that they did for HIV didn't really translate to IBD. So if you do that more broader exploration early on, then it opens up the possibility for doing more with your drug at a later stage.
Thank you. I would like us to talk a little bit about innovation. How does innovation, if we talk about now clinical trials, look today if we compare with 10 years back?
I think clinical studies have got more complex, and they're more complex in terms of their design, maybe in terms of cohorts, dose finding, safety review committees, data monitoring committees, various different go, no-go decisions, DLT monitoring. It's a world of complexity, right? But sometimes, and I think this is especially the case with smaller companies, they try to potentially squeeze everything in to that design, and it can be overcomplicated, which can be detrimental. So I think there is a really fine line between getting what you need into that study to prove what you need to prove, the data points you need to show what you need to show to move forward, without overcomplicating things and adding in just for the sake, because we might need that in the future, because the regulators don't want to see that. It's not something that they're going to want to approve. So again, going back to partnering with your experts early who are able to provide that support and know what's, jumped through the hoops of approval in the past, so you can write and structure your strategy to get what you need, but just get what you need and make sure that what you're getting, you're using. Because another point that we're seeing more and more is data collected, but they're not being used. And you need to have a rationale for what you're collecting and why you're collecting it. And that's especially more important now with, human tissue, GDPR, data protection. You can't just go doing everything and, not using it in the future. So thinking about that, and I know we've said it a couple of times now, but really thinking about the end at the start, which can be difficult. So make sure you have experts to help you with that.
Tara, what do you think is the most common mistake we make when we try to attract big pharma to partner up with?
Well, big pharma will know that how difficult it is to run trials and to develop a drug. All the companies that I've worked with have had failures. Of course, we know that's common in our industry. So when we're presenting to a big pharma, it's not, you don't have to present a perfect case. And the worst thing you can do is hide data or hide something maybe detrimental about your program, and the big pharma doesn't find out about it until late in the due diligence process. It's better to be upfront with anything, any weaknesses, any failures, and just explain. I think that the companies will relate, will understand, and will value the transparency and the trust.
Not naming names, but do you have any examples, like a story that shows this?
Well, many examples, but I can't name the company names, but where I was working for a big pharma in a consulting role and doing due diligence, and there was something in a patent that wasn't disclosed up front, and the patent weren't shared until the very last stage of the due diligence process. And when the big pharma company discovered what they discovered, it just destroyed all the trust in the relationship, and they did not go forward with the deal. And that's one of the reasons why I say just be upfront if there's some weakness, because the company, if they like you and they like your asset, they will try to solve it together with you.
I mean, you've talked about getting help, but for you as providing that help, what part in the strategy work could be regulations, could be data, strategy, statistics, not to mention speed? What do you find most demanding?
That is really tricky. I think it varies depending on where you are in the process. So early on, up front, the most demanding part is working through the regulatory hoops, jumping through all the things you need to do to get approval. It also is making sure that you are positioned right in the competitive landscape. It is a very competitive marketplace, so getting the right data to support your country and site level feasibility selections. And then as you move forward through recruitment, the trial's ongoing, it's recruitment projections and those timelines. They're the one thing that every client comes to us, not every, the majority of clients come to us with very unrealistic, or shall I say overly optimistic timelines in terms of how many patients they can recruit. And that's a key driver in your timelines and moving forward to the next stage of development. So you need to be realistic and transparent with your other partners, right? Because it's going to hugely impact your timelines for development. So I'd say it does vary depending on the stage of where you're at in your program.
I mean, we do talk about this. The whole panel is basically about tips and do's and don'ts. But Tara, if you should try to distillate this, what are you looking for when you are evaluating, let's say, a small but very promising company?
So the data is the key driver, and the quality of the data, the ability to answer, all the questions. But we're also, when we're looking for a late stage, we want to be able to get on the market as soon as possible. So we look at what development is remaining, if we can actually, after the readout of the trial, if it's a positive readout, can we actually launch this? Well, what's the feedback from the regulatory agencies, and what's your relationship with the regulatory agencies? So it's always good to have a very good dialogue with the FDA and the EMA, depending on where you're planning to launch, and have a record of that dialogue to show your potential partner. That's one thing. And we also want to know we don't have to put any more money into the program. If possible, we don't want to have to run an additional trial. Oftentimes we will have to help co-fund a second pivotal trial, and we're open to doing so if necessary, but we're much more interested if you have the funding, of course, yourself.
Laura, please, if you would give us a checklist, do's and don'ts, top of your head.
Very quickly, do partner early. Do critically analyze what that partner is giving you. When you're getting the proposals back, have they provided you with evidence that they're experienced in this area? Have they thought proactively about risks and showed you ways to mitigate them? Do align on values. You're going to be working with this partner potentially for a long time, so you need to have someone you can truly partner with, because clinical studies, product development, it cannot be done in isolation. Very quickly, because I can see the time has gone red, don't be inflexible. And I think that goes back to what we said earlier. So be open to overcome challenges. There will be hurdles along the way. That's part of the process. And you've got to be able to move with that.
Thank you so much, Laura Nichols and Tara Heitner, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll just set the stage for a few more panelists. So please don't leave the room, but stretch, if you will. Need it. Would you mind serving us some water? Because otherwise it would be too shy to. Oh, and I will spill. You will have that. Sorry, Kim, I put you on the spot. Okay. We'll manage some water here. And we will transition now from clinical. Or actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to wait for you to pour the water. Also for the cameramen to be very happy with us so they get a clean cut. Good. Tack så mycket, Kim. Everybody feels good? Feeling good?
Yes.
I'm glad. Okay, so we'll now transition to market access and how to best achieve, of course, a successful outcome and one. And here to share their views is Jessica Lundström, your Director, Market Access at Bristol-Myers Squibb. Welcome. And Jonas Fredriksson, Senior Advisor and Consultant with experience from Sobi and Novartis.
Thank you.
Fredrik Olsson, next to me, are your CEO at Genovis.
Thank you.
And John Strobel, Managing Partner at LamaMed Access. So you'll have to share the mics between you, but I would like us to start with a short round of this question. What is the hardest decision to make when you're about to expand to new markets?
Should I go first? Yeah. I think one of the
Little bit.
hardest decisions is to pick the right market, to really prioritize. And maybe the hardest thing is to decide not to launch, but prioritize the market, and choosing the right is, I think, one of the biggest challenge.
What do you say, John?
I'd say also kind of having a personal talk with yourself and know exactly what you're really ready for. You know, look at your internal resources and then really plan it out, and don't try to bite off too much at once. Focus, go deep, and then you can expand as you're ready.
Jessica, you're up.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you mentioning prioritizing. I work specifically in market access, and I mean the access environment is challenging, and some markets are really unpredictable and difficult to understand. So I'd go for somewhere predictable, where at least can foresee the outcome, and somewhere, depending on the product, of course, where you can. Where they're incentivizing innovation, you can get a lot of value out of it.
Yeah, I think I would say that you do a lot of it's a heavy investment when you make that decision, and obviously I think it's important to make the decision. There will always be unknowns, and you would have to solve them, on the way, I would say.
Thank you. John, if you allow us Scandinavians to be a little bit self-absorbed, because it's at least us in the majority of the audience, what do you feel like is the one thing Nordic companies need help with to access the US market?
That's one. Okay. I wish there was only one thing, then we just go home now. But I think, first, obviously regulatory, that's kind of your price of entry. But then I think there are really three core things. One is product market fit. And this is something you're going to kind of do kind of holistically at the same time. So market fit, make sure you really talk to KOLs, people in the market, potential customers. And the next thing would really be look at reimbursement. can you get paid? And then the last is a really efficient channel to market.
Do you feel like those are more of a typical challenges for us in the Nordics?
I think they should be, typical challenges. At least we really look into those in detail. From personal experience, LamaMed Access, we actually have either started or operated 20 plus companies. Okay, and so over time we kind of struggled with a lot of those, and those are things I've seen not only in the U.S. but 50 plus countries I've got into. So I think it's kind of a recurring theme, but over time you kind of learn from those mistakes and you build up an infrastructure, and it gets easier. In fact, we got to the point now, we're actually kind of doing those services for other people to kind of help them navigate. And it's something I think anybody can do. I know you've done that with your company, set up U.S. operations. But I think it's just a matter of resources. If you have the resources, you can do it. But if you have a local partner, then you can actually work with them and kind of get through those mistakes, hopefully get rid of a lot of headaches along the way as well.
Jessica, we'll dive right into market access. Which factors do you need to consider negotiating the right price or value for your product?
Yeah, that's a really tricky one, and I think it also relates to what the panel before here, how the clinical trial is set up. The willingness to pay is quite different in different countries, and ability to pay, of course, but also the systems for having incentives for innovative products, and also if you're a cost effectiveness market with HTA assessments. So all those factors play a big role, and then that depends on what kind of trial have you made? What kind of evidence do you have in your trial to support entrance in a cost effectiveness market, for instance? You also need to consider if the markets are have like automatic or like systems for regular renegotiations, so you need to lower your price along the way. And we also have the international reference pricing systems. So for an example, Sweden is a small country, but our list price is impacting a lot of other countries. So entering in Sweden with a rather low price will have a big impact on big markets like Germany, Switzerland, Spain, and so on. So, I mean, it might be difficult to foresee. Sweden has a rather high willingness to pay, I'd say, but no special incentives for innovation. But then you have other markets where it's quite the opposite. So you need to do the mapping first to be able to know where you can get the most value out of it, and what you need to get out of course, depending on cost of goods and development costs.
I mean, it is what you say, but how is it more important to get the right price rather than the best price?
Yes, for sure. I mean, I come from big pharma. We generally want to have like a high price and premium price to come with great innovations, of course. But I have examples where we, from a market perspective, had to go for lower price to get into the market, which proved to be a huge success. So, yes, I mean, you need to look at the market, and sometimes the highest price is not the best price.
So, Fredrik, you are our example here today as CEO at Genovis, the company that actually made it. What would you see or your key decisions that you made succeeding, actually growing a small business into, selling one of the biggest companies over the world?
I would say that a key decision for us was actually to build our own sales force very early on, even though we were not really advised on doing that. I think the key decision have also sort of fueled the development of the company going forward, because we could reach the customers, which was the key item for us, and then help that to further fuel our innovation going forward. So I think that was a key decision. And when you're a small organization, it's also important in terms of who we have talked about prioritizing certain markets. So we went for US very early on. obviously for various reasons, but also the individuals that you actually connect to and bring on board early stage is very, very important, and I think that we have learned a lot, the whole company have learned a lot from those early individuals that help us access the market through our own sales and marketing organization very early on.
But do you feel like you had something unique that you thought of or did to make this hard journey?
No, I mean it's hard work, but I think the important thing is, you know, not wasting too much time on unimportant stuff, but rather get in front of the customer and try to build the customer base and get that going, because that fuels a lot of other stuff and keep you in the right direction.
Please feel free if you have comments on each other. But I also would like to ask you, Jonas, because I know you work with this a lot, like broad question, but what considerations should you really consider before expanding into new markets?
So I think before you will expand to a new market, it's crucial that you make sure that you have the right information so you can do the right decision of if you should enter the new market and also which one you should prioritize. Of course, you need to look into everything starts from the unmet medical need, and you look into the competitive landscape and number of eligible patients. You need sales potential, revenue, return of investment, and things like that. But also, you need to really analyze the healthcare infrastructure in the country. You need to look into the regular framework, and which local authorities do you need to approach, and how does the procedure look like? What's the timelines? What's the cost for it? Do you need any local clinical trials in that country, or do you need to have manufacturing in the country? So it's a lot of things there you need to understand. Also, if there is pharmacovigilance obligations, legal and compliance consideration. But then one thing is to get this regulatory approval, but then it starts also with the pricing and reimbursement here also. What's the timeline? It differs a lot from different countries. And I think also what is important here, you need to have local market knowledge and expertise. And here, should you go, do you have that in-house, or do you need to have good partners here to do that? So it's a lot of different things. And then after that, it's supply and logistics. And when that's ready, it starts to plan for the launch. And then should you go with a local distributor, or will you build up an in-house organization, as Fredrik talked about? So I think it's a very complex situation or process, and you should not underestimate it, because you need this information in order to do a really good decision.
This is a question for everyone, and see who feels up to it. But we heard yesterday and today a lot, like, there's a lot you have to do. You have to have all the information you need. You have to make the right decisions. You have to think about all the decisions you have to make. You have to plan ahead, while at the same time be very open to flexibility and being agile. Do you have any concrete advice for people who do this? Like, how do you do that well? John?
Yeah, I really think jump in, but just make sure it doesn't kill you. That's the main thing. Go in, try it, dig deep, work out the bugs, maybe in a local market or a region. Don't like jump into the US or jump into Europe into 20 countries. But work out the bugs, stay close to your market, get the feedback, refine it, and then you'll feel more comfortable, and hopefully even get revenue, profits, and then expand gradually as you see fit.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think we discussed collaborations, and I think, leverage all the connections you have. I think there are a lot of great like trade associations, chambers of commerce. We have that many different in Sweden. They exist in many countries. They are often interested in helping you, so take all the help you can get.
Yeah, that's a very concrete advice. Ask for help or pay for help. If I should, conclude. Anything else? What do you think, Fredrik?
No, I would like to agree with Jessica. I think that preferably we would have our own people in the local market, because that's a great learning. So that has been our approach ever since. That if we can get a local product specialist or representative in a country, we would prefer to do that rather than having them here in Sweden, because that brings a wealth of knowledge about the market and those subtle nuances. We think we are culturally very, there are cultural differences, which I think is important, and you will get that at the same time. But then I think in certain markets, I think we have Business Sweden, which is quite unique, and they could help you a lot about, when it comes to regulatory and things like that, fairly efficiently in our experience.
Can you mention some of them you're thinking about specifically?
I mean, for example, when we went into China, that was obviously a challenge, but if you don't want to set up your own operation and things like that, having Business Sweden, all about recruitment, taxes, pensions, how things work in that particular local market, those types of things, you can have that advice, and I think that's very helpful.
Jessica, did you want to?
Yeah, I was thinking of the same thing actually, but one more thing, we were discussing learnings as well. Document your learnings. I mean, I think we all know that we make a lot of mistakes, and sometimes the mistakes are the best ones, because then you don't do them again and you do things the right way the next time. So, yeah, learn from mistakes as well.
I would also like to, go into, but no. Actually, when we talk about mistakes, that's much more fun. Can you give me some examples that you come to think of? Yeah, John.
I think a lot of times people will go in and set up a distributor and just say, okay, it's done. So I think it's really important to find a partner you can really trust, and then also maintain control of your brand. So when you go in, keep that customer contact. Even if you have a local partner, work with them to talk to your customers so that feedback comes right back to your company instead of setting up a barrier.
Fredrik, you had a quite early wake-up call, you said, when we prepped a little bit in the company.
I mean, you tend to, sometimes you tend to sort of underestimate also, I think, what John is talking about when, staying close to your customers, even if you have a distributor, try to bring that wall down. But also I think distribution is one of those things that it sounds simple, and then you find yourself in a situation where it could be immensely complex actually to actually ship products.
Did you find yourself in that particular situation?
Absolutely. We thought that we could ship everything from Sweden. You could drop ship it to our customers, the pharma companies in all over US, and it wouldn't be an issue. And it turned out to be actually super complex, and because of customs, clearance, and those types of questions, and customers were disappointed. They were waiting for the product, for 1.5 weeks for waiting for an enzyme, and that was not acceptable. So we clearly needed to find another way. So now we have our own warehousing and customer service and things like that in US, and then we ship next day delivery to our customers. So I mean, those types of learnings, underestimating the complexity of shipping, very delicate product enzymes in our case around the world, it's not simple. It takes experts to do that.
Yeah, and I think this with local market knowledge is so important. And if you don't have it, try to find a reliable partner that can help you with that, because it's crucial to get the right decisions here.
Let's talk about market access again. How do you form a realistic idea about the market share that you can access? Jessica, this one is for you, I think.
Yeah, I think realistic is the key word here, and you need to be a bit self-critical, I think. But of course, it's the competitiveness. Are you first to market, second to market, third to market? That will, of course, have a huge impact. What kind of evidence do you have? will you be able to, to get the position you want based on the evidence you have? How complex would it be to get market access? Can you achieve that? Can you achieve the value you want? I think you also need to think of, is it a very guideline-driven market? Is it promotion sensitive? And can you invest in a sales force? So I think depending on what kind of product you have and the resources you have, all those aspects will have a huge impact. But I've been in a situation both where we hugely underestimated the potential of the brand, where we have one of the world leading brands actually, which is super cool, which was not expected at an early stage. But of course also the opposite, where you thought this would be simple and then was not so easy.
No, but also when you estimate your market share here, I think you need to go back and look into the patient flow also. How many patients are there? Look into how many are eligible, the competitive situation, and which patient segment you will really focus on. And then you need to do an estimation, how big share can I get for here?
I feel like still we need to go back to distribution and logistics that you were in on. I feel like we could dig a little deeper there. What are the pitfalls one should be aware of if sitting somebody here in the audience and get scared now? Help them out with a parachute.
In terms of distribution?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there can be a lot of what I call brand collectors. When you set up distributors, they just want to take your brand on, and they may just kind of put it in a big bag with a lot of other products. So you really need to make sure there's a personal fit. Sometimes there may be a small local distributor that's actually going to give you more time than a large national distributor. So you really need to make sure they are in line with your values, that they can really spend the time in product, education of the product, to really go forward and do what you need to do.
Do you have any more hard lessons?
Yeah, I think we needed to sort of reformulate our products, which at the time we didn't realize was actually innovative. But most of these reagents are traditionally was shipped using dry ice, for example, in big styrofoam boxes, and that proved to be very expensive and even more complex. So we didn't know anything about lyophilizing enzymes, but we sort of developed that part of it, and now we could sort of ship the enzymes in ambient. So I think temperature. So I think those kind of things, if you can bring also innovation to other stuff beyond the product and be a little bit more unique, that's also a way to become more competitive.
Do you agree with that, John?
Yeah, I'd agree. Because you look at the logistics, but you also, once you sell something, it's not over. You have the post-sale service and all the other things around it. Things a lot of companies kind of forget about. They think, we sell it, great, we're done, we have revenue, we walk away. That's just the start.
I think you all made the point how important partners or collaborations are, especially locally. Would you say which ones are really crucial in order to access a new market? In which sort of areas?
I think what's crucial here is I coming back to, I think in the beginning, that regulatory framework. When you work on that, you need to know that, and there I think it's super important to have a good partner. But then also when it comes to market access and reimbursement pricing, there you need to have local knowledge here also, and a partner there also. And then of course also when you go into marketing and sales, if you don't decide to do it with your own organization, it could be different partners, but it could also be the same partner here also. It depends on the market.
I mean, for many, it is a goal to have a partner. Maybe they don't. Do you have any advice on how to keep up on the fast-changing regulatory framework?
I've always just hired someone that really knows regulatory in the market. There's a lot of, like in the US, a lot of ex-FDA people you can hire, consultants and things like that, because that way they know it. I'm not a regulatory expert, but I know a lot of them that I can call. Let's
go on then. risk assessments. We're quite risk averse. The norther you get, I don't know if that's just en fördom. But what are the biggest risks that you do face when expanding to new and, let's say, unknown markets?
I think it's what we said in the beginning, that you underestimate the complexity in the process. I think that's very easy to do. You're optimistic, ambitious, you would like to reach as many markets as possible, but you need to really prioritize which are the most important for you.
And also on the underestimation piece and the time needed to succeed. I think I've been in, well, maybe not the same situations as you, expanding to new markets, but in very complex projects, you really need to look at what's the value of this investment, this expansion. Also, if I get delays, what's the area under the curve? What will be the value if I get a 1-year delay? And build that into the risk assessment, I think is very important, because I've done fantastic, complex, huge projects, and then they were so much delayed that the value was almost zero, unfortunately.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's also related. I mean, it was around. It's a project in Sweden. I can't tell all the details because it's not published yet. But around finding a model to find the undiagnosed patients within that area. But it was very complex also from an internal perspective, because it was quite creative and innovative, meaning that the approvals took so long, and then the external approvals took so long. So now we're at the too late stage in the product life cycle, so the value will be quite small, opposing they could have been huge.
Fredrik, what are your views on which risks, are you going to face?
Well, I think early on, when you take on a project and you decide to go into a certain market, you tend to, going back to Jessica and timeline, I mean, it's more a rule that it takes longer than you actually anticipate before you're there. And then I think also one of the things is making sure you understand your value proposition of the service or the product, and then coming back again to actually try to have those key opinion leaders or customers that you hopefully have, and use them to actually make sure what you're actually trying to achieve here provide the value that you expect.
I think we'll have time for some questions. Let me just take some eye contact with you, Mike. Is there coffee up after this? Okay, good. So we know if you don't have any questions, we'll mingle a little bit instead. But do we have any questions from the audience? You could also please just raise your hand and we'll give the mic to you. Everyone is up for coffee. No, but seriously. Yeah? Do we have anything on the...
We do, yes. When is the right time to start building my market access story, and do I need to include this in my trials?
Jessica.
Yes. Yeah, very, very early from the start. I mean, we've been, in the company I work in Bristol-Myers Squibb, we've been buying assets. And unfortunately, a couple of years back, we bought assets where the access requirements wasn't not built into the trials. And we have products that are great, and the clinicians want them, but we can't get them through the system because we don't have the data needed for market access. So yes, it's super important to, and also to, I mean, to the discussion in the panel before us here, it doesn't have to be much more costly to include it in the trial. There are like quality of life parameters, thinking of when to end treatment. That's usually, if you look in the cost effectiveness market, that's usually really driving the costs if you don't know when to stop treating. That's super important. And those parameters can actually make the whole difference. So start with the end in mind was mentioned before. I really want to emphasize that from a market access perspective as well.
We'll all remember that. I think it would take one thing away. Yes, please.
Also comment here, in some countries require local clinical trials also to get an approval, and it's important to notice that. So it's important to have that in mind also when you're planning for it.
Mike, do we have any other questions?
Not at the moment. No.
Not at the moment. Well, I have one before. I'll promise you a coffee and maybe even get something to eat. With limited resources, but of course we want to pay everyone who are experts, we would like to have deals, but I mean, we also have, and a lot of companies face limited resources. Which costs are unavoidable, you understand, oundvikliga, that you really should prioritize? Everyone gets to answer. John.
Well, obviously regulatory, because you have to do that just to get in the market. But I think also is really maintaining your brand identity, because that is the core of your company. And so if you can maintain that, it doesn't cost a lot, and then also just focus and do incremental steps. So it may not have answered the question directly, but really go baby steps, go deep, and then expand.
Yeah, so put your money at least in the label, in the brand.
Well, in the brand, yeah, and make sure you have a good image going out of it, and you work out the bugs, because that's going to allow you to scale faster and also more efficiently later on.
Fredrik, what do you think?
Beyond the obvious, in our case, would be to make sure that we have freedom to operate. That would be that you need to have. Otherwise, I would say that again, if you can get in front of some key customers, key opinion leaders, and really do interviews with them, our experience is that gives a lot of information also on the competitive landscape. You will have an easier way to assess the market. Someone said once that spend a day with a customer is worth more than 1 month of watching competitors or 1 year of reading market reports, and I find that quite true, actually.
Jonas, what should you spend your money on if you don't have so much of them?
Now, I think it's important to really, as I said in the beginning, is to get the market knowledge. You need to know the market, and here you need to spend effort, investment to do that before you take the decision. You need to have that, and then of course also you need also to invest in the regular process and get the cost for get approvals. That needs to be there also.
Jessica.
Yeah, and don't forget market access. No, but of course, I think, regulatory, of course, is super important. If I look at when we prepare very early, the combination of medical, really engaging, as you say, engaging early with opinion leaders and understanding the market, as well as preparing for market access is, you need to have that. But agree on the positioning. I think in smaller companies, of course, you can combine medical and commercial competencies in one, but having that cross-functional approach early, but small scale is super important.
Will you all be available over coffee if we want to pick your brain about anything else? Yes.
Of course.
Yes, you can't say no. After that, thank you so much, Jessica Lundström, Jonas Fredriksson, Fredrik Olsson, and John Strobel.
I'd like to get things kicked off with the first company presentation of the day, which will be Expression Biotech. And I'd like to welcome to the stage CEO Bent Frandsen. Welcome, Bent.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you to BioStock for allowing me to present Expression Biotech here today. I'm going to talk about the company and our lead asset within breast cancer, and also, of course, talk about that we have actually recently announced a rights issue. So Expression Biotech is listed on Nasdaq First North Growth Market since 2016. It's fully owns Expression Biotechnologies, which is the operating company out of Denmark. This is where we have the protein expression technology Express, which was the reason for the foundation of the company back in 2010. And we also have our proprietary vaccine pipeline, and as well as a service business based on our protein expression technology. An important component in our setup here is a DAPVAC. We own 34% of this company. It was established as a joint venture in 2017, and it has a technology called VLP, virus-like particle, which is an important component in our lead asset, the breast cancer vaccine. This is our pipeline as we depict it today, led by ES2B C001, a HER2 plus targeted breast cancer vaccine, which is in late preclinical stage. We're very excited about this because it's progressing towards the first clinical trial that ExpreS2ion will sponsor on ourselves. Secondly, we have a CMV cytomegalovirus vaccine that we call ES2B I002. This is in early research in a collaboration with another Danish biotech called Aixial. We combined their AI technology and our protein expression system to develop a novel CMV vaccine. And we have other exploratory research that I hope to tell you more about in the future here when we have the IP situation in place revolving this. All addressing multi-billion markets. Our protein expression system, I mentioned, we call it ExpreS, spelled with S2 because it's focused or based on Drosophila S2 insect cells. Hence also our company name, ExpreS2ion Biotech, spelled with an S2. The good thing is that actually the platform is clinical phase 3 validated. If you look at this chart from the right, we were heavily engaged in a COVID-19 vaccine during the pandemic, where ExpreS2ion made the active ingredient, the receptor, the RBD protein, using our ExpreS system and coupling it with the VLP from a DAPVAC. This was outlicensed to Bavarian Nordic, who sponsored it all the way through to a clinical phase 3 trial that was concluded in Q3 last year. It met its primary endpoint, so we are super pleased that we are an early stage biotech company, but we have a clinical phase 3 validated technology. We have other projects in the clinical phase, in clinical phase 1 and 2. These are malaria vaccine projects, all being sponsored by University of Oxford, whom we've had a long-standing collaboration with for more than a decade. They have a license to use our protein expression system and have developed multiple antigens, and right now are conducting 6 different clinical trials on 4 different malaria projects. And we are very thrilled that they are accelerating the clinical development now in prolongation of the pandemic. Furthermore, as I mentioned, the HER2 breast cancer, ES2B C001, this is what I'm going to focus mainly on during my talk here. And our earlier work consists of vaccine projects within CMV, as I mentioned, but also influenza and Nipah virus, the latter 3 all being in grant-sponsored projects where they're more or less fully funded, actually. In case of the Nipah virus, including clinical phase 1 trials, so that's cool. Regarding ES2B C001, we think we have a very compelling investment case. We are targeting the HER2 breast cancer and addressing a high unmet need in this very common cancer area. The market size, in fact, exceeds 30 billion euro in the coming years, and we believe that we can gain a blockbuster size sales of about 3 billion euro once we get there. As I mentioned, the technology revolving this vaccine is clinically phase 3 validated. Furthermore, as an organization, we are led by 4 in our management team, and we have a board of directors team also of 4 people, and combined all of us, we have more than 200 years of experience in taking drugs from the lab through to clinical stages. And furthermore, we have a scientific advisory board with key opinion leaders endorsing what we do in this field. So breast cancer, very common. 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with this disease during a lifetime, and it's characterized by a HER2 self-antigen that can overexpress and lead into tumor generation and, in fact, death. And that takes its toll on more than 600,000 women every year. The competition is fierce in this arena. For more than 2 decades, we've seen Roche distributing Herceptin. Monoclonal antibodies are dominating in this field, and most recently also antibody-drug conjugates. But actually those therapies come with some flaws, namely resistance and also compliance and cost. And we believe with our approach that we can address these drawbacks. Our vaccine, as I mentioned, we make the antigen, the active ingredient, in our protein expression system. This is shown here in the middle as a HER2 extracellular domain. And basically we can attach it to the VLP, which is a bacterial structure resembling a sphere with 180 fixed points on the surface. And the technology on this is that we can apply any protein of interest using a proprietary isopeptide bonding technology, a super glue, if you like, to, with high density, couple any protein of interest on the surface of a VLP. And that makes a very effective vaccine. And this is what we have evidence with in clinical phase 3 with COVID-19. And we're actually creating polyclonal antibodies using this approach where we target all the 4 epitopes of the extracellular domain. And that's important to show here because the dominating monoclonal antibodies, they really only target 1 epitope. Maybe that's the cause for the resistant effect that we look for, and durable effect as well. In light of time, I'm going to go very quickly over our data so far. We have seen in vitro assays strong resistance, and in this in vitro assay, you can see on the right panel that ES2B-C001 actually inhibits growth of tumors, even in trastuzumab-resistant HER2 human breast cancer cells. We have also in an in vivo model looked at tumor growth and tumor-free freedom in mice. And here we have a study to the left that shows that we can completely inhibit growth of tumors over a 3 months period if we inject our vaccine with an adjuvant, as shown with the red curve. On the right curve, you can see survival data. This is super interesting because, in fact, we can see survival over 600 days now, which is astonishing in these mice, which normally would die after 2 years. And here they actually carry a tumor that actually never grows, and they survive. So we hope we can translate into a human setting as well. We have completed the preclinical safety package here in April last month. We are in the middle of the CMC, the manufacturing, and we are designing the clinical setup as we speak and progressing on that. And in fact, we aim to submit our clinical trial application here in Q3, and hopefully within the next 12 months we are in a clinical phase for real. As I mentioned, our scientific advisory board consists of multiple well-known key opinion leaders in this field, and they have all endorsed our approach with making a vaccine for this, and also our plans going forward. So we are super thrilled. Plans going forward requires funding. We have just this very month announced a rights issue. So from the 12th until the 27th of June, we are aiming to raise 60 million SEK. It's a 50% guaranteed rights emission, which also carries 2 warrants. So if you subscribe to a share, you'll get a warrant TO10, which is exercisable in Q4 this year, and a TO11, which is exercisable in Q3, Q4 next year. Of course, this is an upside to investors joining because it follows the plans that we have with our breast cancer vaccine. And you can see 65% of the proceeds are going into the breast cancer vaccine asset and getting it into the clinical trial. And then we have 10% for the CMV vaccine, a smaller portion for the grant-sponsored projects where they're not fully grant-sponsored, as well as 20% working capital to continue the company in this exciting phase. So all in all, we are super thrilled, and we hope you will join us here later this June, where we will open the subscription period. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bent. Great presentation. I'd like to start off broad, talking about vaccines. You mentioned the fact that your treatment is a cancer vaccine. When most people think of a vaccine, they think of a therapeutic or a preventative vaccine, right? Especially with infectious disease. How is this different within immuno-oncology?
Actually, I should have highlighted this is a therapeutic breast cancer vaccine. So you will have been diagnosed with breast cancer, and it will be a treatment that potentially is combined with the monoclonal antibodies. But the point is, we don't want this disease to be recurring, which is so often the case. And we believe with our polyclonal antibody effect that we can generate this resistance. And that's where the vaccine comes in. Actually, later, maybe we can investigate a preventive approach as well. But right now, it's for a therapeutic treatment.
Okay. Well, and remaining along those tracks, now the word vaccine has unfortunately come with a little bit of a stigma after the pandemic. Is that something you're worried about?
On the contrary, the pandemic has helped bringing vaccines in people's minds. If it wasn't for vaccines, I think we would have seen much more fatalities in the world. So I'm very pleased we are in the vaccine field, and now there's more focus on that. I should also mention, with respect to cancer, that they are actually using the combination of insect cell-made antigens coupling with a VLP. There are actually big pharma products out there for HPV vaccines, which actually use their own approach on this. So we're actually addressing a market which is not unknown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, speaking about COVID, there's a question here about how the positive phase 3 data in COVID can be applicable to the breast cancer project.
Well, to our understanding, and our chief scientific officer says it all along, we seem to be the only protein-based vaccine technology in the COVID-19 field which has shown durable protection. So we've seen in the Bavarian Nordic-sponsored clinical trials that after 12 months, you still have the same high level of neutralizing antibodies. And bear in mind that our COVID-19 vaccine actually did not include an adjuvant. We will do that in the HER2 breast cancer vaccine. So, but that's quite unusual in the COVID-19 space. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, Bavarian Nordic decided to put it on the shelf because of the commercial aspects. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, there's a question here about your partnering strategy regarding C001. You stated that you're looking for a partner already in phase 1. Why is that?
Well, when we started on this journey, we were bold and saying we are going to take it all the way to the clinical proof of concept. Mm. That's like concluding a clinical phase 2 trial. It's long, complicated, and cost demanding. So we had to face the realities. So we have initiated business development and are knocking on doors to big pharma and getting some interesting dialogues at this stage. But as everybody says, data counts, and clinical data are better than preclinical data. So that's where we're leading now, going now.
Great. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now. But thank you so much for answering the questions and for your presentation, Bent.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, now I'd like to invite to the stage Jamal El-Mosleh, CEO of Elicera Therapeutics. Welcome, Jamal.
Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Jamal El-Mosleh. I'm CEO of Elicera Therapeutics, which is a Swedish cell and gene therapy company developing next generation armed CAR T-cell therapies and oncolytic viruses. On the picture here you see Professor Magnus Sand and his research colleague DU, and they have together with their team developed 2 CAR T therapies, 2 oncolytic viruses, and a platform technology we call iTank, that can be used to arm CAR T-cell therapies in order to help them to meet two of the major challenges that these therapies face in the treatment of solid tumors. This is a slide presenting our project pipeline. You see that we have 4 programs under development. ELC301 is a CD20-directed CAR-T therapy armed with the ITANK platform that is soon to enter clinical trials. So we have secured funding and also the regulatory approvals to initiate a clinical study in B-cell lymphoma. We call this study the KARMA trial, and we intend to treat the first patient right after summer vacations here in Sweden, so in August. ELC401 is also a CAR-T therapy. This time we are targeting IL-13RA2, which is a target that is overexpressed in glioblastoma, but also a target which we think is overexpressed in a number of other solid tumors. So there's a potential to broaden the portfolio further if we or a potential partner should choose to. ELC401 is in preclinical stage, as is 201, but we are preparing both of these programs for clinical studies, and we intend to enter clinical studies either with a partner or through soft funding. So we have different initiatives for both of these tracks. ELC201 is what we call a next-generation oncolytic virus. It's in theory applicable for treatment of any solid tumor. It's armed with the ITANK platform and another immune-stimulating factor to trigger a parallel immune response against cancer. And ELC100 is the 4th and last program, and actually the only candidate which we haven't armed with the ITANK platform. But this is an oncolytic virus which we have developed specifically for treatment of neuroendocrine tumors, and we have an ongoing clinical study in 12 patients. We have treated 11 out of 12 so far, so we only have 1 patient left to treat during this year. Talking about CAR T-cell therapies, it's worth to mention that CAR T-cell therapies lies within the immuno-oncology space. And of course, in immuno-oncology, you can use the patient's immune system in many different ways to treat cancer. And I would say that CAR T-cell therapies have been shown to perhaps be one of the most promising types of immuno-oncology out there. And the reason I say this is because we have now long-term follow-up studies showing patients that were treated with CAR T therapies over 10 years ago, and you follow them up and you see that they have an intact immune system against cancer, and they still remain tumor-free, which shows the curative potential of these types of therapies. However, you only have approved CAR T therapies in the space of hematology, blood cancer. 6 approved therapies. So no CAR T therapy has yet to be approved in the solid tumor space. And of course, the solid tumor space is much larger, about 10 times larger. That's where you have the highest unmet medical need and of course also the highest commercial potential. So why don't CAR T therapies work as well in solid tumors as they do in blood cancer? And there are 2 main reasons for this. One, solid tumor has a very heterogeneous antigen expression, meaning that it's difficult to find a target in a solid tumor which is overexpressed on all tumor cells and not just some of the tumor cells. You don't have this problem in blood cancer. And in this picture here, we're trying to exemplify that by these blue cells here, showing the tumor cells that lack the CAR antigen target and therefore will not be attacked by the CAR T-cell therapy, so they will form CAR T-resistant metastasis they are no longer able to treat. The second big challenge that CAR T therapies face in treatment of solid tumors is that you have a very immunosuppressive tumor microenvironment in a solid tumor, which you don't have in blood cancer. And this immunosuppressive tumor microenvironment counteracts the CAR T therapy, it exhausts the T cells, and it also makes it difficult for the CAR Ts to penetrate the tumor and come into contact with the tumor cells to kill them. And both of these challenges we believe that we can meet with the ITANK platform. So due to a short time here to present this, I won't go into the details on the mode of action of the ITANK platform, but just rather tell you that the point of the ITANK platform is to trigger a bystander immune response. The point is to have a parallel attack on cancer in parallel to your CAR T therapy. So what we're trying to do with the iTank platform is to trigger the patient's own T cells against multiple targets on the tumor cell, not just the target that the CAR is directed towards. And what the iTank platform also does is that it creates an environment that directly counteracts the immunosuppressive tumor marker environment in solid tumors, and which actually also strengthens the function of the CAR T cells. Now, of course, we use this platform technology in our own candidates, but you can actually use it in basically any type of CAR T cell out there, regardless of which antigen target you are going after, or which other potential genetic modifications you've done to your therapy. It should be able to add the iTank platform to these CAR T therapies. So that's why we have a little bit of a different business model for the iTank platform in comparison to our other drug candidates. Ultimately, we intend to license all of our programs and assets, but for the iTank platform, we intend to license this multiple times to be able to capitalize on this in several licensing deals, generating upfront payments, milestone payments, and potential royalties. And I use this slide to show the potential and a benchmark for both for the iTank platform, but also for our other CAR T candidates. The first example here is from a Japanese company, which is actually the only other company, and I'm sure there are others out there, but we haven't identified them, that has a similar platform technology that they call Prime-T. And they are basically aiming to do what we're aiming to do with the iTank platform. And this Japanese company has been able to successfully license their technology multiple times to both big pharma companies, big biotech, and smaller biotech companies interested in the field of CAR T therapies. And we believe we can do the same thing. The example in the middle here, Novartis licensed a CAR T candidate from Legend. The reason this example is relevant for Elicera is because ELC-401, which we are developing against glioblastoma, is in preclinical phase. It's an armed CAR T therapy, and it's possible to broaden this further into other indications, just as Legend's candidate. So a preclinical CAR T candidate armed with a technology that unfortunately we don't have more information on, but generated $100 million upfront. And the last example here is from Janssen, which licensed two CD20-directed CAR T therapies from a Chinese company called CBMG, now called Elicera. They had performed two initial clinical studies, not that unsimilar to what we're aiming to do with the KarMMa study. Of course, very nice results from this study, generating $245 million upfront. So we believe that all of these different examples can be related to what we're doing at Elicera and shows the level of interest that the industry puts in these types of therapies. Now we have reached preclinical proof of concept for the iTank platform, and we've published extensive preclinical data in Nature Biomedical Engineering, which can be considered one of the more prominent scientific journals in the world. There we can show a broad attack on multiple targets when we compare iTank-armed CAR T cells with the efficacy of unarmed CAR T cell therapies in different mouse studies. So regardless of which mouse model we use, which tumor target we're going after, or which indication we're going after, we see a prolonged survival and lower tumor growth when the mice are treated with iTank-armed CAR T cell therapies. Which also indicates that this is universally applicable with any CAR T treatment. And also important to mention here is that adding the iTank platform to your CAR T therapy doesn't add any toxicity. So it's equally safe or dangerous to use the iTank-armed CAR T therapies as it is to use your conventional unarmed CAR T therapies. The KarMMa study that we've planned for ELC-301 in B-cell lymphoma is targeting CD20 in contrast to CD19, which the three approved CAR T therapies today in this indication are targeting. So there are already approved therapies in this indication, but the point here is that 50% of the patients relapse and are in need of additional treatments, and this is the patient population that we primarily are going after in this case. The plan is to treat in total 18 patients, 12 of them in a dose escalation phase, 6 patients in a dose expansion phase. In total, we will have 12 patients receiving maximum tolerable dose, which we believe is an adequate number of patients to draw some conclusions about efficacy and of course also safety. And substantial soft funding has gone into this trial, around 40 million SEK. So we have funding to recruit and treat all 18 patients. We intend to report data from the first cohort of 3 patients by the end of this year, and from the first 12 patients by the end of 2025. Looking at the ELC401 and glioblastoma, we believe that this is a good indication to target for this specific candidate for the reason that, one, the target that we're using has reached proof of concept in this specific indication, so we know it's a relevant target for glioblastoma. And also glioblastoma is has a very heterogeneous antigen expression, meaning that patients that respond to CAR T therapies very quickly get relapses. And it's also a very aggressive tumor with a very aggressive tumor microenvironment. So adding the ITANK platform to a CAR T therapy, specifically in glioblastoma, makes a lot of sense. We have planned a clinical study with this candidate. We have produced the viral vectors that we need for the CAR T construct. What we don't have is funding to initiate the trial, but we have different soft funding applications that we both intend to submit and also that we have submitted. So we're hoping for some positive news from those. And we're also talking to potential partners to also have that as an alternative to move this into clinical studies. The 2 oncolytic virus programs that we have, ELC100 and ELC201, are somewhat different. So ELC100 is specifically developed for treatment of neuroendocrine tumors, while 201 you can use to treat basically any cancer. And in contrast to ELC100, ELC201 is armed with the ITANK platform and another immune stimulating factor to really trigger this bystander immune response. ELC100 is, as I mentioned, in a clinical study, fully financed by VictoryNet Foundation, which is a foundation focused on research and development, specifically in neuroendocrine tumors. The milestones that we have ahead of us the coming 12 months are a lot with a focus on clinical milestones. So it's an exciting year we have ahead of us. So first off, we will start the KARMA study, as I mentioned in the beginning of, at the end of this summer, in August. And the first patient cohort data report end of this year. And we only have 1 patient to treat in the ELC100 study, so that patient will hopefully be recruited this year with a full data report in 2024 as well. And we will come back and report to the market how we intend to continue developing this program based on the data that we collect after completing the study. And then for the ITANK, ELC401 and 201, we have several potential news that I can't promise that we will reach them, but we're working intensively to reach those milestones as well. So we are already in discussions with potential partners for licensing the ITANK platform. Hopefully some positive news from that track sometime during this year. And as I mentioned, for 401 and 201, we don't intend to finance clinical studies on our own if it's not with soft funding or together with a partner. And we're working to secure that as well. So with that, thank you so much, and
thank you, Jamal.
Ask some questions.
Thanks a lot, Jamal. A great presentation. Unfortunately, we don't have much time. I'll go with one question here. You talked a lot about the recent deals that there have been in this field with CAR T cells and also technologies similar to ITANK. How is ITANK compared to, I want to say better, but compared to these other technologies that have just gone for some major deals with Big Pharma?
So the ITANK platform is a arming technology for CAR T therapies. And of course, we're not the only ones that have thought that this is important. But I think that we are one of the few that actually has something that could be a solution to the problems that CAR T therapies face. So if you ask me about Legend Biotech, for example, I can't tell you the difference between our technology and theirs because they are not releasing more information about that. The same was with, for example, AstraZeneca also has an arming technology, which you have very little information about. But looking at recent press releases from Astra, for example, you can tell that their arming technology is based on targeting the immunosuppressive tumor microenvironment in solid tumors. So in that sense, it's somewhat similar to what we're doing, but not all the way to also helping the CAR T to face the challenge of antigen heterogeneity. The Prime T platform from this Japanese company, however, they can claim that they are doing both of these challenges, meeting them. The difference is that they are using 2 immune-stimulating substances to reach these goals, while we are going a different direction, and we're using a protein from a bacteria. And the point with using a protein from a bacteria is to really trigger an immune response from the patient. So in a sense, you can say that using the iTank platform is like using an adjuvant to create like a therapeutic cancer vaccination in combination with your CAR T therapy. So this bacterial-derived protein will basically trigger an immune response that helps the patient's own T cells to target multiple targets on the tumor cell and also counteract the immunosuppressive tumor microenvironment. So both of them at the same time, basically.
All right. Well, thank you, Jamal. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions. But if you stick around for lunch, hopefully some other people can ask you some more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, great. It's now time for another riveting panel discussion, which Sonia, expert insights. Expert insights. It is a panel discussion. It's just Jonas is leading it.
It's definitely a panel discussion.
Hi, good to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Gentlemen, welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
Please have a seat. I'll reserve this seat for myself.
All right. So, all right, put me in the middle, huh?
Yeah. There we go. Some water could be good. Now we can all inspect while Kim tries not to spill the water.
I'll not try this.
Thank you, Kim. So, panel discussion titled Nordic Innovation and Global Investments. Those are big words and also sounds like quite a broad topic. But what we're here to discuss mainly is what sets Nordic growth stage companies within biotech, pharma, and medtech apart in a global setting. And what do they need to do and to prepare for in order to strike more and bigger deals? And what preparations can they make to attract international venture capital? With me here today to discuss these pressing matters our distinguished panel. We have Peter van der Meyden, representing the DNB Healthcare office in Stockholm. We have Anu Balendran, senior, I have to read this one, this is a long one. Senior licensing director of global business development from Novo Nordisk. Welcome. And last but not least, we have Søren Lemonius, who is managing partner and founder of the Sunzone Life Science Ventures. So I'm going to start with perhaps the toughest question to answer right away, and you can all feel free to dig in. Given the high quality science that we are known for in the Nordics, why aren't more big deals being made involving Nordic life science companies? And I know that there was a deal announced fairly recently involving a Nordic company, but never mind that. So what do you think, Peter? Is there a simple answer to this question?
Simple answer. Well, I think that reminds me a little bit of what a investor told me some years ago, where he said, it's funny, these Swedish companies, they invest 100 million in product development, yet then they forget to invest an additional 100 million in sales and BD, because that's often seen as something, is that really needed if we have developed, you know, such an amazing product? And I think in general, what we see, and it's not just on the BD side, but also investor relations side, there should be a little bit more respect for that particular aspect, as seeing it as a sales function. And what I mean with that is, to give an example, when I was a student and I had a job selling ad space, you had a list of 1,000 companies, and then, you know, you need to convert 10 of them. It's like, oh, only 10? Well, it might be a shock, but the people at the other end of the line, they're not really waiting for you to call them. And I think that with pharma, you know, you're looking at hundreds of opportunities, investors, you know, like Sunstone. I mean, there's so many private companies, and then alone in the US, there's 700 listed biotech companies. Then here in the Nordics, there's additional 200. In Europe, there's an additional 150. So also specialist investors that we speak to, they say, you know what? We don't really have time to look at all of them. So it's also a little bit the basics of sales, cold calling, using a CRM, following up, and really seeing it as that kind of an activity that needs to be done.
So in short, what you're saying is that the Nordic companies are a bit lazy.
I think not lazy. Thank you for that, by the way. I think that they maybe not always dare to be as forward-going as maybe the American colleagues, where they pick up the phone and they get the other person, they try to get them through the telephone, you know, to tell them all about the product that they've worked on so hard. And really being a little bit more outgoing and really looking at it as, you know, sales one-on-one. Okay, sales one-on-one, how do we do this? Okay, long list, we start here, we follow up, etc., and being a little bit more outgoing in that respect.
Anu, being on the side of things where you have to do the hard work of picking projects, is that your impression as well, that is there too much of a if we build it they will come mentality and not enough aggression going on in the outreach?
I mean, following on from Peter and to your point, yeah, I mean, you can sit on it. The fact is not they will come, they don't know about it. That's really the point. So you have to take that step of making sure that your potential partners know about it. So this is really important, that you just can't say, oh, I'll just put all my money into the technical part. And normally it's scientists leading the companies maybe, and they're really interested in spending their money there and not thinking about getting the message out, marketing it properly, creating the network and getting to the right people. You know, you can do all that by yourself. Nobody knows about it. So this part is important, that you also invest into the BD part to make sure that they know about it. So yeah, it really is a key thing that a lot of companies that are focused on science first a bit too much and forget the business really suffer. Yeah.
So Søren, at Sunstone, you obviously invest in companies. You have also a great influx of companies that would like you to invest in them. When you assess these companies, do you take special notice into the fact, did they prioritize their assets also towards BD, or is that something you feel that you want to help them with?
So that was several questions, right, on top of the initial questions.
I am a pro, yes.
So let me, I just want to go back to the original question of why are we doing that bad on translation of science into companies? Because it's the wrong, I mean, we're doing very well. On a Nordic perspective, I mean, we're forming more companies, we're having more seed financings, we're having more Series A relative to our European peers. The only other region that does any better than us is probably the UK. So we're actually doing really well in the Nordics. So just kudos to all of you for doing that. And then I think, but that's it, of course. I mean, relative to the US, I think McKinsey analyzed and it's about 1 to 3, right? So we can, in Europe, do a lot better. Long discussion, how do we get there? Then to the sort of follow-up questions, once they have then, because we see companies, we don't see projects, right? You typically need to have formed a company, have some IP, maybe have had your first sort of angel funding before you become relevant to us. And then how much BD do you need to have done and what type of BD plan? It's not too important to us. I would say to us it's more whether the type of innovation that you're working on is relevant for BD, I would say, and has the generics of what we think can create early tractions. I mean, some things are easier to get in a dialogue with a pharma company about than other stuff, right? So those are the things we're looking for, and then we'll help with the BD part of it.
So then, for any relationship, there has to be some type of initial attraction going on. So what do you need to do then as a small bio or medtech company to immediately catch the eye of, for example, a big pharma or a top-tier investor? What would you say is there a secret sauce, Anu?
I don't know if there's a secret sauce, but I think one of the things that's important is, you need to put the effort into finding out who you're going to go after. So first, it does take the effort to understand what does the big pharma partners want. So think about it, even when you start a project, you might be excited about, but is there actually a market for it? You might think there's a patient population, there indication, but also make sure that the pharma companies are considering a treatment modality regimen that you're developing as a potential future product. So you keep in mind that you have a customer there for partnering. So identify them first. So you're approaching a company that actually wants what you have. And I do get this, like a neurology company, oh, Novo Nordisk, oh, you're a big pharma. So, hey, are you interested in a neurology product? No. Why would you even ask me? Because we don't do neurology. So understand who you're going, and then try and, you need to build the relationship over a while. Make sure when you're early, you're reaching out, you're educating your potential partners, keeping them informed of progress. The sweet spot you think you want to partner might not be where they want to partner. They want to partner at a different time point. You need to understand that. So it takes that kind of effort, really building on Peter, to make sure that you are putting that, kind of time into building that relationship.
Yeah, sort of basic research needs to be done before you approach either an investor or a big pharma company. But then having done perhaps that first initial basic hygiene factors all cleared, we know that our project is in the right field and perhaps in the right phase and so on. But still, there are probably quite a few other projects out there. So what can you do in order to stand out? Can you do something crazy, come in with a hat with a turkey on it, or
you might get noticed for the wrong reasons? It's really the quality. And I guess there's no generic rule about it, but you have to stand out from the competition. So to understand what else is there and why you differentiate, and making sure that you show that differentiation data, you kind of put effort into creating that data, and then presenting it in a very succinct manner is important for you to really stand out of the crowd. You're right. I mean, nobody's going to give you any extra attention because you're Nordic. I think all the pharma companies are looking across the world for projects, so you just need to compete globally from day one. So keep that in mind, and then keep a sight of your competition, and understand how you're differentiating. And if you're not, maybe it's even best that you don't move forward if you don't have a differentiation profile for your particular product compared to what's out there.
So the question about how do we set ourselves apart as Nordics, I can throw that away. Peter, when you work with companies and if you advise companies, for example, how would you give them concrete advice as to how to sort of stand out in the crowd or break through the noise, really?
Well, it's very much what what was just said about understanding your market, and it reminds me of an interaction we had on. We were on a roadshow with a Swedish company, meeting a specialist investor, and the first 4 or 5 slides were about market size. And very early on, this investor just cuts off the CEO of the company like, I'm sure it's huge. Let's move on. And it was really about where does this idea come from? Why? Who are you going after? And explain how you think you're different, but also very much be open to the idea of not going it alone. And this comes a little bit back to also the financing market we've seen over the last 10 years, where financing was so easy that everybody just wanted to finance themselves all the way through to the end of phase 2, because otherwise it's seen as giving it away. If we partner too early, we give it away. So be open to that also, because partnering early will have maybe benefits of working with a partner that has a lot more experience and resources of how to set up a certain study design for a certain indication. We've seen plenty of Swedish companies, unfortunately, going at it themselves, and then, you know, phase 2 is a complete disaster. Study design was maybe not as it should have been, because maybe the knowledge was not in-house. So be open to partnering earlier on to get that help. And I mean, the funny thing is, I think Sweden's largest company and biggest success, BioArctic, I mean, they partnered preclinical, obviously a very unique case in many ways, but be open to that and not just think about, okay, we're meeting investors, give us your money. We're going to pitch what we're selling.
Is that what you experience? So they come in and say, invest in us, give us your money. We can do the rest ourselves. I mean, you are an active investor.
No, I don't think that. Also because they come. I think we have a lot of good entrepreneurs with a good understanding of the core of the core innovation that they control, that they have developed, right? And I think, I mean, my advice would, I mean, don't go talk to him if you have something for Novo Nordisk as the first person. I think the best advice you heard today was from this cornerstone presentation. You need to look at their clinical advisors. You need to find, because if you have an early innovation, then you're basically selling it into R&D. You're not selling it into business development, right? They're the gatekeepers. They're these people they put in front of R&D to keep you out. You want to find some links into R&D, some alliances you can make, and that goes through the independent clinical advisors they're using. You need to find them if you have something you think is relevant for Novo Nordisk, for instance, right? If you have something in obesity, find out who are the clinical advisors they're working with. Next, then you go and find out what are they actually doing. I mean, you want to understand their business when you go and see them. You want to understand their products, because then you understand their needs. And just by being credible about understanding them is going to increase their belief in you having an interesting innovation. I mean, you understand what you need to meet to be of relevance and interest to them. And then you can go and talk to them at that time. I think that's part of also what we try to bring to this understanding, help our investments with understanding that when you come to us, it's really about that. Do you have an innovation that we believe that can be worked up to this? And I think that's where it starts. I mean, there simply are some innovations that are true innovations, but where they don't lend themselves to early business development or early partnering. And then as you point out, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it, which is of course a hard call to make yourself.
So Anu, I don't know if you want to respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, I take Søren's point, and there is a concept of understanding what is a pharma company looking for, their interest, maybe getting to the right scientific person for earlier programs, so that you have a champion within the company. And if you can achieve that, then you have somebody within the company fighting for your corner, and that is so difficult to find in a pharma company. You know, so if you put the effort, I mean, this goes from your BD effort is not just turning up at bio partnering meetings and having, you need to do that contact with their BD as well, so that they are aware of it. They can, you know, sometimes a BD person could be very scientific, and a lot of my colleagues are, so you might find the champion in them, and you know, I've championed stuff internally. So you have to reach out to the different people. You need to connect and make sure that they are getting excited about your science, right? And so you reach out to the scientific part. So make sure your BD campaigns also involve all the scientific meetings, making sure your scientists out there presenting posters are connecting with the pharma scientists who come and read their posters or their talks. Keep that connection. Make sure that you educate them. So there are people who truly understand what you're bringing out over time, so that when you're ready, there's several people saying, yeah, this is exciting. We've been talking to these guys. That's what makes a difference.
And that leads into the point of being persistent, being active, reaching out to then several different layers within the other organization, I guess. So, but if you are a small company and you're fortunate enough to have, gauge that initial interest, which key factors do you need to consider when you, as a company, then evaluate your potential partner? What do you think, Peter?
Well, it's maybe from an investor point of view. Especially if you have companies that are either still private or looking to go public, then in the past there was always this discussion of, well, we're also talking to some VC firms, but they're not willing to give us the valuation that we're looking for, and they want a large chunk of the equity, and they have other things that they want to have, and if we go to the stock market, maybe we can just get more bang for our buck. But I think you need to look at what else is that partner bringing to the table. And I think if you go with investors like a Sunstone and others, it's so much more than just money. And I think now that the market has been so tough over the last 4 years, I think a lot of companies have realized that if you have strong partners in terms of investors that are really partnered with you and want to see this through, that really brings so much in terms of not just money that they bring and additional rounds that they can sponsor, but also advising you on what path to go and maybe also when not to go down a certain road. So I think it's really important to think about what else do they bring than just money.
So the question is then, Søren, what else do you bring? No, it's a serious question. What do you feel is the best thing apart from the financing that Sunstone can provide?
I think, hopefully also by now, a good network across the industry, right? And I think and access to people. I think also a good understanding of what it is being a biotech entrepreneur, that it's not a straight line. We also bring, of course, you could say, additional financing, right? We understand that, yes, we put down a plan that reaches 4 years into the future, and we put financing into getting there, but very frequently, if ever, that is the way it goes. And we know that, and we understand that. I think maybe, this is part of the dilemma you face if you go on a public market, right? I think we have probably a better and more nuanced understanding of it not being a straight line, although that very naturally our money comes at a higher cost. I think it's more expensive. Yes, we probably do take a bigger owner share, right? But we probably also have a bit more patience, and we will be ready to finance subsequently, which can be some of a struggle if you're a listed company and you did not meet that phase 1 or 2 or whatever it was. So I think that's part of what we and some of my other colleagues bring into these companies.
I was going to ask you, Anu, we heard in an earlier panel that as a big pharma, then sometimes you see projects, and you were touching upon this, Peter, that the clinical trials might not have been optimized perfectly and so on. How allergic are you at Novo Nordisk, for example, to that? Are you very understanding and forgiving when it comes to those things?
As a biotech, you probably want to get to the inflection point faster. So I think that's understood. So you might not do a pharma quality trial with all the parameters measured, co-developing diagnostic kits and so forth. So we take it. But what that means is that you might think, oh, I'll just go into the phase 2 now. But to be honest, no, we need to run this trial again. So the important part is you've got data. So you actually produce that human data that there is efficacy. So you've achieved something. So of course that is appreciated. However, maybe it's not as advanced as you think it is. There will be a need to repeat or maybe have a more extensive next trial. So it does delay the timeline. So there's going to be a difference in your timeline to launch versus what the pharma company will put down. So I think you need to, I wouldn't say you need to always run a pharma quality trial. You need to optimize your cash flow situation to what you can, but try as much as you can to build it. And I have, on that point is, now if you look at some of the pharma, biotechs in the US who can raise tons of money, they've got rounds of money, $500–600 million in their bank accounts. They are, some of the licensing deals we've done, acquisition, that when you go in and look at the DD in those companies and look at the trials they're running, those trials are as good as the trials we would have run. So they've got, ex-pharma employees working for them, all the expertise, and they're doing the full bang. So on a global basis, you need to go big. You need to be able to do those to compete with maybe US biotechs are able to raise much more cash, and even Chinese biotechs, right? So it's a changing environment, so the quality of clinical trials run is increasing.
So that may or may not be disheartening to a few, perhaps, companies that are represented in the audience, knowing that you should preferably have $500 or $600 million to run perfect clinical trials and so on. But in China,
can I give you a comment on that?
Sorry, yeah, of course.
So, I mean that is correct that the amount of money being invested in biotech is going up, but strangely enough, the stage at which the deals get done is getting earlier and earlier, right? So basically, we're in this interesting dilemma that a lot of more money is getting pushed in, but over the past 10 years. We're seeing more and more early deals. Right now, the split for the past 3 years is that 50% of all M&As have been before phase 2. So they're phase 1 or preclinical M&As. And I mean, if you followed the press recently, I mean, Forbion have done 2 very recent, our colleagues in Holland have done 2 very recent big deals, both phase 1 deals. So yes, that could be the case, but it's not being followed by the deals now. So don't go too disheartened. There's still plenty of opportunity to sell innovations while it's still preclinically.
Thank you so much for bringing the hope back. But still, as there are challenging times right now for many companies, and if you're not lucky enough to have a strong partner or an investor owner with deep pockets, then maybe I should turn to the banker and ask, are there any nice, creative, alternative strategies to secure funding to be able to create this data that is so important to get forward?
Well, we
have a loan.
Exactly, at DNB we do loans, so that's true. Now we spoke about this last year, I think, when the market was a lot more grim than what it is now. Alternative financing structures, whether it be convertibles, other types of funding that we see, that you have companies financing particular studies, etc. Yeah, we've talked about it, partnering earlier on, because that was the difference over the last couple of years, that in the Nordics, especially the stock-listed companies were able to access funding so easily over the last 10 years, whereas on the continent, that capital market isn't really there to the same extent, so they were forced to look for alternative options. Well, alternative options here were always seen as a bit of a weird thing to do, but we see it more and more. But I'll just add to the hope a bit more, because I mean, last year we sat here and we discussed, well, big pharma has so much money, we should expect more M&A. It's not really happening, but now we're really seeing that, and that domino effect leads to specialist investors getting more money back from their investments, that being reinvested. Yes, for the moment it's still a lot of private, but now with Calliditas we also see it public. We were involved in a capital raise for Fleury recently, where they raised more than 500 million for the reverse merger with Index. And okay, that's a very high quality case and very de-risked, but still, when we're speaking to investors now versus other years, our salespeople really get the feeling that, okay, they're open to looking at new cases and making investments. We've seen it with Fleury. We did Brain Cool rights issue, which was heavily oversubscribed. We did a large block in Ambea last week. So really it's coming back, and now with Calliditas, I think that really helps to generalists also looking at healthcare again, saying, okay, this is something we need to look at again. So I think it really looks much better now, and I think we're really on the way back now.
I'm feeling so optimistic that I almost forget my next question, but it's great. Is that sort of a? Do you think that these types of success cases then in the like the example with Calliditas, does that sort of immediately install more interest in the bigger investor base for this sector, or is it more like a fluke?
No, because I think with specifically Calliditas, a great company, and already last year people were thinking, well, that will probably be taken out, and then after a while the market started thinking, why is it not happening? And now that you see more M&A in the private sector, and now also this deal then potentially happening with Calliditas, and there being a lot of generalist investors in Calliditas, which will potentially have a very nice return on their equity, being more open, we feel that when we have our discussions with specialist investors, but also generalist investors, that they are coming to us like, okay, what other interesting cases are there? So that really leads to, that really does create a domino effect.
And Anu, I'm going to turn to you now to keep fanning the flames of hope. So you were actually almost promising me out in the lobby earlier that Novo is going to do a lot more deals. Maybe I overstep now, but you don't have to promise. But tell us something.
Great that I felt like I'm being the non-optimist among the group here, and every time contradicted by Søren. So we are optimistic. There is a lot of optimism because, you can see the growth in the pharma sector now. AstraZeneca announced a couple of weeks about the ambition to get to 80 billion in revenue in 2030. That's a big ambition. That really means they need to fill their pipeline. They need to create more drugs to get out there, which automatically means they are going to be active looking at what's out there in the market. And as you're saying, pharma is also very keen to engage early and do the deal so that we can, influence and develop the drugs going forward. So the sector is hot and there is a lot of interest. So there is potential. So there is a market out there for these projects coming out of companies. So I think there's a lot of optimism and a lot of growth potential.
So I hope you don't want to contradict that statement.
No, absolutely not. I think there's a lot of optimism, and I'm very sure that Novo Nordisk is going to be buying a lot of companies because they have a lot of money that they need to do something with.
Please don't look at Anu as if he has a big bag of money. But
go talk to him.
Yeah, I'm seeing that this is an interesting discussion, and I like where it's going. But we are running out of time, so I just wanted to, before we part, and we are the only thing standing between these people and lunch, so it's a dangerous position to be in. But lessons learned and best advice. What would you share as your best advice in, say, 30 seconds to any company looking for a partner, looking for investment? Basically, that's what everyone is looking for. So what would you say? What could you give us your best advice, Søren?
30 seconds, wow. So I think my best advice for a company looking for money is to when you go and do it, you do it. We frequently see companies that are sort of testing out, should we be raising money, or come sort of with a half-baked plan, not have thought it sort of from A to Z. And that is I see it frequently, that's why I'm giving the advice, never ever do that. Venture capital only get measured at 2 different points. One is the number of the returns we give back, very easy to measure, and then everything all the way back to companies coming and seeing us is very difficult to measure. So the only other thing you can measure is how many, from what opportunity space do they find these successes? How many companies comes to see you? So we always want to see you, and we are experts at saying no. And if you don't come super prepared, it becomes very easy to say no. So always, before you go fundraising, have thought through it, have your data room ready, have everything ready. Don't give us the excuse to say no, because we will.
Sounds like a mother when the kid comes asking for ice cream.
How do I follow that? But I'm going to keep it to 30 seconds. Just so I think today was a really nice theme that Peter started about knowing your partners. I think you need, as a biotech, when you're ready to think about partnerships, you need to invest into BD, and understanding who's out there, who you're going to target, and invest over time about learning about your potential partners and making sure they know you as well. So I think that's a really good message that we can take home from what we've discussed today.
Thank you.
That's because we're over time. The lunch person switched mine off.
We know now who has been talking the most.
Yeah. No, I'll keep it short. Genmab, obviously one of Europe's most successful biotechs, multi-billion-dollar company. Many people don't remember or realize that they've also had 2 near-death experiences. They were down at just a couple of million euro market cap, and their CEO has often said, there's no eureka moment where all of a sudden it clicks. You just need to keep on delivering your data, need to keep on pitching your company, and be open to discussions with partners, and just keep on doing that. And obviously, I'm not promising that everybody will be Genmab, but there are no shortcuts, and just keep on doing it.
So in short, be very prepared, know who you're talking to, and grind. That's the answer. Thank you very much, Søren Lemonius, Anu Balendon, and Peter van der Meyden for your time. Thank you.